Step number 7 in the 10-step process is hue, saturation, and luminance. Now, hue, saturation, and luminance has a panel all for itself. So let's just go ahead and move on to that. It is the fourth panel from top. We were doing all our adjustments up until now in the basic panel, and now we're gonna move on to the fourth panel, which is called the HSL and grayscale panel. HSL stands for hue, saturation, and luminance. Now what this allows you to do is it allows you to control each color individually. Each color in your photograph, each color from these colors, it allows you to control each of those colors individually. It allows you to adjust the hue for that color, the saturation for that color, and the luminance for that color. And we'll just take a look at what each of those words mean. But first, let me just go ahead and apply the first 6 points to this photograph so that we are in a position to apply step number 7. Now, the first step was camera profile, so I'll just go ahead and change that to camera vivid. Then white balance. White balance looks okay to me. I'm just going to move it slightly to the cool side because it's looking a little bit warm. But if I actually move it to the cool side, it is looking a little bit too warm, so I'm just going to leave it there. Then the next thing that comes in is exposure, and as you can see in the histogram, there is a highlight clipping warning for me, so I'm just going to bring back the highlights to bring back some of the details in there, and I think that should do it. Let me just click on that to see if there are any. So I think these areas, even if they are overexposed, they're not missing any important details, so I'm just going to leave them there. Then I'll just bring out the shadows a little bit so that the dark areas have some amount of detail in them, and a little bit on the blacks as well. I'll just bring back the whites too. So there we go. I think we're set on the exposure. We have ample amount of detail in almost all areas of a photograph. Then after that, we're going to go to clarity. So I'll just increase clarity up to 50, and then we move on to vibrance. Now, when I increase vibrance, if you noticed, the overall vibrance of the photograph looks fine, but the areas that are a little bit blue, they're a little bit blue because there is a mixed light in this photograph. So we have light coming in from the outside as well, and there is light coming in from the inside from these bulbs as well. So both of these lights are different colors and different color temperatures, and because of that we were having trouble in setting our white balance. Now, before I had increased the vibrance, that imbalance of color, that imbalance of the color temperature was not that evident. But as I increased the vibrance slider, that has become really evident with these blues highlighting over here. Now what I would like, I like the vibrance of the rest of the picture, just not these blue. So what I would like is just for these blues to become a little desaturated, to become a little less vibrant. This is exactly where hue, saturation, and luminance comes in. So for that, and let me just go ahead and apply the contrast step before we move on to that. So I'll just add the contrast, and then we move on to hue, saturation, and luminance. Now, if you want to just reduce the blues in this photograph, we have the slider for each individual color present over here. And what we need to do is we need to come to the saturation tab in this panel, and then from there we just need to reduce the blues. And do you see how it has reduced all the blues from here that had become quite increased when I increased the vibrance slider? So if I had reduced the vibrance slider, it would have made the entire picture dull, but I want the entire picture to have the vibrance that it needs, but I only want the blues to appear a little bit less, to appear a little less saturated. So what I did was I went to the HSL grayscale tab, and then in that the saturation tab, and then I just reduced the blues down, and that got rid of all the extra blue that was coming over here. Now this is applicable in situations like this where because of mixed lighting conditions you have, you cannot set the white balance properly, and some areas are blue and some areas are warm. So you can apply this over here, but you can also apply it in some areas where you've increased the vibrance and it has still not gotten the vibrance of one particular color that you would have liked. Let me show you an example. So let me just go ahead and close this image and open another one. So yeah, this was it. So this was a photograph I took in Thailand, and it has really beautiful islands and beaches in Thailand. So let me just go ahead and first apply the first 6 steps. So camera vivid, the white balance looks okay. Exposure wise, let me just brighten up the shadow areas and darken up the highlights a little bit on the blacks and whites. Then clarity, and then vibrance. Okay. So when I increase vibrance, the overall vibrance looks good to me, but I feel that the sky could become a little bit even more vibrant. Because if I do it using that, it also increases the vibrance of the sea and the greens over here, and I don't want that. So I'll just go ahead and bring that down to the point where I like this the vibrance of the rest of the photographs, and I'll just go to the Hue, Saturation and Luminance tab, and I'm just gonna go ahead and again in the saturation tab, I'm going to increase the saturation for the blues a little bit to make them a really a rich blue. Now I also feel that the color of the sky, the blue of the sky is going a little bit towards the purplish side. So I would want to fix the hue of it as well. So for that I can just go into the Hue tab, and then if you notice that each one of these colors you can change the color to the color that is adjacent to it in the color wheel. So right now, if I feel that this is going a little bit on the purplish side, so I'm just going to move my hue slider a little bit on the cyan side. So now if you notice, the sky looks a little bit more like a realistic sky. Earlier, it was looking a little bit purplish. The clouds look a little bit purplish. So I'm just going to go ahead and move the blues to appear a little bit on the cyan side. So you can use the Hue, Saturation and Luminance tab or the Hue, Saturation, Luminance panel to fix the colors and to have more control over each individual color. Now, if I want to actually, let me just go ahead and demonstrate what the Luminance tab does. If I think that, you know, the sky is a little too bright and I want to make it darker, I can just go ahead to the Luminance tab, and what I can do from there is I can just darken the sky a little bit, and that is going to make it really dramatic. Now this is a little over dramatic for me, so I'm just going to go back and keep it to its neutral position. But you get the point. You get what each one of these tabs can do. So hue is if you want to change the color a little bit, you want to move it. Want to move it to the color adjacent to it in the color wheel. Saturation is if you want to make each individual color a little vibrant or a little less vibrant, and luminance if you want to make each individual color darker or brighter. So this gives you a lot more control over individual colors. It's a lot more powerful than vibrance. So if vibrance is not giving you the right results, you can come here and you can apply these settings to individual colors. So that was step number 7. I'll see you in step number 8.